The humming of overhead lights was constant, but it did nothing to fill the heavy quiet that lingered just beneath the claps. Tyler Perry's stride to center stage felt familiar, rehearsed, yet that familiarity couldn't melt the edge slicing through the air. This was no routine talk show. This one was different. His name glowed bold across the screen, yet even that light felt dim next to the figure seated opposite him. Ibrahim Traoré, and unmoved, watched Tyler not with awe or anticipation, but with the kind of stillness that unnerves. The crowd's cheer faltered sooner than expected, unsure whether to lean forward or hold its breath. Tyler, ever the professional, flashed a practiced smile, but even his warmth couldn't erase the cold tension radiating from his guest's silence. As he welcomed viewers with charm, it became clear this wasn't going to be the interview anyone expected. Ibrahim, he began, voice casual, eyes calculating. A lot of people are saying you're dangerous, unpredictable, that you're undermining democracy. How do you respond to that? His tone held a layer of condescension, sugar-coated incivility. The camera cut to Traoré's stillness. No lean, no twitch, just a blink, slow, deliberate. I've seen democracy, he said, voice low, as if it was never meant for broadcast. It doesn't look like this. The audience recoiled slightly, not in volume, but in posture. Shoulders straightened. Some shifted uncomfortably. Even the laughter cues seemed uncertain. Tyler's eyes flickered. Just for a second. He leaned forward, trying to reset the tone. But the air had already shifted. The narration, intimate and visual, pulled behind the polished studio walls to expose what they really concealed. Decades of silenced stories, the kind not aired but bared, systems that learned to applaud diversity while feasting on erasure. Tyler's charm had once been a sword against injustice. Now it risked being a shield for the powerful. You talk a lot about colonial trauma, he pressed, still composed. But don't you think there's a better way to inspire change than military? The word was weighted, dragged across the carpet between them like a challenged Traoré. Didn't he blink? There are better ways, but they weren't offered to us. His voice carried something deeper than anger. It carried a memory too dense for forgiveness. The studio lights dimmed imperceptibly. The mood darkened. In the quiet space between words, images emerged, flashbacks, narrated without fanfare. Crumbling school buildings in Burkina Faso, children passing armed convoys to get to class, foreign executives in high-rises signing off on land grabs, headlines whispering with colonial echoes, unrest, instability, threat to investment. There was no blood shown, no screaming, just the heavy silence of buried truths. Trying to steer the ship back, Tyler reached for what had always saved him, his story. But look at me, he smiled again, this time thinner. I made it. We can rise without war. The statement floated in the air like smoke, already dissipating. Traoré leaned forward, not aggressively, just enough to let the moment deepen. And how many of your people had to die for you to make it? No rise in volume, no accusation. In tone, just truth, raw, undeniable. The pause was longer this time. Tyler's eyes widened subtly, but the cameras caught it. He didn't move. The audience didn't breathe. Even the lights seemed unsure. The question had detonated something unseen, and its fragments were still settling into the space between them. No applause, no music. Just a moment hanging still in time. Then Traoré leaned back slowly, measured, letting the silence say what his words didn't. You asked me here for truth, he said, his voice as steady as before. You sure you want to hear it? The words had barely left Traoré's mouth before the room felt colder. Tyler sat still, his eyes cast slightly downward, as if searching the floor for a version of truth he could still stand on. The audience remained frozen, unsure whether they were watching a scheduled segment or the dismantling of something sacred. The cameras kept rolling, but the narrative had shifted from entertainment to exposure. Traoré didn't press further. He didn't need to. The weight of silence was doing the work. Then came the unraveling. Through narration, we descended into the fragmented past that made Traoré who he was. Dust choked the air in the flashback scenes. Burkina Faso under foreign boots. A 12-year-old boy clutching a book as soldiers kicked open classroom doors. French troops in clean uniforms, shouting in a language he understood but never trusted. His uncle, beaten and dragged away for organizing a peaceful protest over stolen ancestral land. A neighbor's son, 16, gunned down for accidentally crossing an invisible line around a European-owned gold mine. No headlines. No justice. Just one less boy in the village and a mother who never screamed. Because screaming never helped. We hear the whispers of teachers trained by colonial boards. Obey. Don't speak too loudly. You'll never lead. The sound of chalk breaking. Midward, the smell of burning paper after a confiscated essay. Dust, blood, and the quiet certainty of being erased unless you resisted. In sharp contrast, narration drifts into Tyler's past, not with resentment, but layered in insight, from abandoned theaters to billion-dollar studios. But there, beneath the applause, was a quieter truth. His earlier place, fierce, uncomfortable, unfiltered, slowly changed. Not by force, but by suggestion. Make it lighter, they said. Less confrontational, less black. He adjusted, knowing survival sometimes meant surrender. One memory surfaces, a meeting room with executives, where a script about police violence was shelved after a white sponsor frowned. A producer's voice echoes from the past. Just stay funny, Tyler. You go to serious, you'll lose them. Dialogue resumes. Tyler clears his throat, trying to regain control, but his voice lacks the usual certainty. But isn't anger dangerous? Doesn't it just create more division? The room tenses. It sounds like a question, but it lands like a defense. Traoré doesn't answer immediately. Instead, narration carries the weight forward. A small home in Burkina Faso. A grieving mother holding a government-issued box, her son's bones inside. No name engraved, just a sticker, operational collateral. The footage of her sobs never made it to newsreels. Sponsors feared backlash. The story was too raw. Then, something unexpected. A quiet voice from the audience, trembling but resolute. A former journalist, uninvited, stands slowly. They censored our piece on the cobalt child workers, that it would make sponsors nervous. The room turns toward her. Another figure rises. A former UN intern, visibly shaken. The reports were rewritten. I watched them delete names, erased entire villages. No security moves, no one interrupts. The truth is spreading not like fire, but like fog, whispers becoming wind. Not riots, not slogans, just the unbearable sound of stories long buried coming up for air. And at the center of it, Tyler Perry, once the man who told black stories no one dared to, now faced with the realization that the spotlight he earned was built on shadows he never questioned. Narration takes us to another suppressed memory. Years ago, Traoré had been invited to a closed-door summit in Washington. He flew quietly, but customs held him for hours. His visa had been flagged. A sympathetic senator intervened, but by the time he arrived, the meeting was postponed. No cameras, no press. The visit went undocumented. The footage, mysteriously lost. Tyler's name was on the guest list, but he never showed. No one had told him. Now, as those moments resurface on his stage, in his house, Tyler's polished image begins to fracture. His jaw clenches. The confident host gives way to something more human. Confusion, shame, awakening. The truth wasn't just spoken, it was planted. And now, it was growing. He leans forward slightly, voice barely audible beneath his breath, as if asking the question to himself more than anyone else. Why didn't I know? The microphones catch it anyway. Traoré, still seated in quiet command, finally responds, not to attack, but to answer. They made sure you didn't. Asterisk phones rise across the audience like a field of blinking stars. The studio was supposed to control the narrative, but the audience now held the broadcast. Clips had already hit the internet. Traoré's piercing truth, his words slicing through the veil of civility. Hashtags bloomed like wildfire. Hashtag unscripted truth. Hashtag TRARE, acute unedited. Hashtag Tyler, DIDNT. Note: within minutes, millions were watching not the show, but the breakdown of an illusion. The director panicked, signals to cut, but Tyler, eyes still wet with confusion and recognition, raises his hand slowly. Let him speak. His voice is soft, but firm enough to paralyze the control room. The feed continues. Ibrahim Traoré stands now, facing the main camera without hesitation. He doesn't grandstand. He doesn't perform. He simply looks into the lens, into the homes of millions. We are not asking for pity, he begins, every word measured. We are asking to exist without chains, without scripts, without edited truths. The camera zooms slightly. No soundtrack, no graphics, just truth in its most dangerous form. Calm, direct, unfiltered. For decades, Traoré continues. They handed you scripts, told you how to be palatable. You gave them what they needed, bet. They never gave your people what they deserved. The words land like quiet thunder. He doesn't look at Tyler yet. His gaze remains fixed, unwavering. They paid you for your talent, but asked you to soften your rage. They applauded your growth, as long as it fit the box. But they never told you about the children mining for their sponsors, or the villages buried under corporate roads. A beat. The room doesn't breathe. Then, finally, Ibrahim turns to Tyler. His tone doesn't change. I watched your movies, laughed, cried, admired what you built. But my people were still dying under the boots of those who funded your foundation. The words don't blame, they reveal, and that's worse. Tyler doesn't flinch. He can't. The tears come now, not dramatic, not performed, as real. As silent as the truth now closing in around him, narration carries the moment deeper. We see the footage of Tyler shaking hands with executives from firms accused of exploiting African labor, images of press events funded by development partnerships later exposed for environmental destruction, close-ups of documents showing donors linked to arms trades and mineral theft. It wasn't conspiracy, it was omission. Tyler's platform had been built with strings he never bothered to trace. He opens his mouth, searching for something to grasp, some thread of innocence to cling to. I didn't know, swear, I didn't, but the words sound hollow. Desperate, Ibrahim steps in softly. You didn't ask. The reply is neither cruel nor loud, just final. It closes the door that excuses try to pry open. Tyler lowers his head. The studio lights do not dim. The cameras do not cut. The network can't stop the flood now. For Ept, once the world watches in real time, and it doesn't blink. Viewers across continents lean forward. Students in classrooms pause their lessons to stream the moment. Activists gather around phones, mothers, minors, children, who still walk through the dust of stolen futures. Narration turns internal now. Tyler's thoughts, not yet voiced, spiral. He sees his own rise through a different lens. The years he told himself he was doing enough. The deals he made to secure the platform. The subtle voice inside that once said, "This doesn't feel right," drowned out by applause. He remembers a line from his own film, one meant to inspire, but now it rings hollow. God helps those who help themselves. But what if some were never given the tools? And in that silence, Ibrahim speaks again, this time not to Tyler, but to everyone watching. "You called me dangerous because I refused their script, but I'm not the threat." Silence is. He glances once more at Tyler. There is no hate in his eyes, only clarity. "You are their success story. I am their reckoning." And just like that, the broadcast becomes something else. Not a show, not a debate, but a mirror. One held up to a world that prefers edited heroes to unedited truth. One that just realized it was never watching a guest being interviewed, but a system being undone. Weeks moved like shadows unseen but deeply felt. The official episode vanished from platforms within days, replaced by sterile statements about editing conflicts and technical inconsistencies. But the internet doesn't forget. Pirated clips multiplied, re-uploaded in every format imaginable, subtitled, dubbed, recut to lo-fi music, projected in high school classrooms in Johannesburg, Paris, Chicago. TikTok Reels paired Traoré's final line with footage of protests. University halls screened it underground. The words had escaped the broadcast, and now they lived. Tyler Perry disappeared from public view. A press release said he was engaged in personal reflection. Behind the scenes, narration paints the picture his team never would. He walks his studio lot in silence, passing giant posters of smiling characters who once healed audiences but now felt like cardboard ghosts. A dinner party, weeks in planning, is canceled last minute. A text from a white executive he once called a friend reads, "You really fumbled the bag, bro." Another message is shorter. "What were you thinking giving him that mic?" He says nothing. Not to them, not to the cameras. At home, alone, he stares at a sealed envelope on his desk. It's from Ibrahim, handwritten. No return address. He doesn't open it. Not yet. The letter sits untouched on the same mahogany desk, where deals were once signed with grins and gold-plated pens. The world does not wait. Change doesn't ask for permission. In Burkina Faso, word spreads of a scholarship established quietly in the name of a murdered schoolteacher. The funds appear suddenly. No press, no photo ops. Local children call it the Traoré gift. In Europe, a mining giant publicly pulls out of West Africa, following weeks of protests and a string of damning leaks. One internal email confirms Tyler's anonymous donation to an international human rights monitoring group. No one links it back to him, not officially, but people begin to suspect. And those who do, stay silent. Back in Atlanta, Tyler visits a small cemetery on the outskirts of town. It's dusk. No cameras follow. He kneels beside a simple gravestone, his mother's. The wind doesn't stir, but something within him does. In his hands, a photo creased and worn. His younger self, wide-eyed, hungry, fierce, he holds it against his chest like a question. "I forgot where I came from," he whispers. Meanwhile, across continents, Ibrahim walks through a dusty village path. The sun filters through the trees. Children dart past laughing, barefoot and fearless. An elderly woman waves, her eyes wet. She says his name like a blessing. He nods, smiles just barely, not triumphant, just present. A small boy, no older than 10, runs up to him and hands him a folded flyer. It's a printout of a viral image, him and Tyler on stage. Beneath it, a handwritten caption in crayon, "Truth wins." Ibrahim looks out across the field, quiet. His voice doesn't break the air, it echoes in his thoughts alone. They gave him a stage. He used it to entertain. I gave him truth. He finally listened.